Good morning everyone, welcome to chessroads.com. Okay, today I'm gonna show you a game which was played between Anatoly Karpov and Vasily Topalov in the year 1994 in a linares tournament. Okay, here Karpov is white, he played d4, knight f6, c4, c5, knight f3, c into d4, knight into d4, e6. Okay, this was like a transposition. Maybe it will become transposition if you play knight c3 and e4. It will be Sicilian hedgehog system. Here Karpov played interesting move g3. Now the idea behind g3 is simple. He doesn't want to close with this diagonal on h1 to a8. He simply wants to keep this bishop open on this diagonal. The other option is he can simply play knight c3 and e4. But here Karpov just don't want to close it with e4 pawn. He wants to keep all his pieces active, so he played this variation. So knight c6, bishop g2, bishop c5, knight b3, bishop e7. The reason why it is played because in the previous position on bishop c5 the knight is on t4, and now white to play. Before this move he can simply play bishop e7, but why he played bishop c5 to e7? Because if you play bishop e7, white will do simply castling or knight c3 with a knight on the center square. In the same position if he played bishop e7, white will never play knight b3. Instead he forced the knight to move to b3, and then he played bishop e7 so that he will gain a tempo. So here white played knight c3, castling d6. Here Karpov played bishop f4 and knight h5. In normal theory, this bishop, we won't like to give this bishop for this knight. Instead we will like to play like moves bishop e3. Then if you play knight f6, you will simply play h3 and try to keep this double bishop open on these long diagonals. But Karpov decided that he'll get even more advantage giving the bishop on f4. He simply ignored this and played a move e3. The reason why e3 is also good because now the knight on h5 is under attack. He cannot play back, or now black is having only few options, that is, one is knight f6 or other is to capture this bishop on f4. If you go knight f6, that will then the move knight h5 doesn't really have any idea. He'll simply play e4. Then then this bishop having a good future on e3, it cannot be challenged, or even can play h3 and keep this bishop alive. So after e3, black is forced to take knight f4, e into f4, bishop d7. After bishop d7, white simply played queen d2, queen b8. Now black is threatening to play rook d8 and trying to defend this pawn on d6 with his rook. So rook e1. Now rook e1, white is now threatening to play a move called f5. Maybe f5 looks very good because the threat of f5 is first is the queen diagonal is opened, and next is he can create a weakness on e6. If you capture f5, then knight d5 square is weakness, and even bishop c6 directly loses a piece on e7. So f5 is a very good threat. So Topalov sees this and plays g6. After g6, white still wants to play f5, so he played h4. now the threatening of h5 and try to break this. Then later he'll play f5 pawn sacrifice to open his king. So if white played a move like h5 to prevent f5, for example, if he plays a move like f5, then I think f5 can be given here directly, because after f5 any of the pawns or king, any if something will be very weakened. This pawn on h5 is weakened, or even sometimes you can even capture this pawn. So there will be a threat of f5 continues if you keep on playing h5 levels. So black left that and played a6 and h5. So the idea behind a6 is simply to open this rook files and this queen open file. So here he played b5 trying to open. So after a6, white karpov sees that there is not much good squares for this knight on b3, but there is a good move, like maybe topalov missed it, of knight c5, because this bishop on e7 d7 is pinned. So he ignored the move of b5. So I think the idea of a6 will be very slow if you see the move of knight c5, because there is no more idea. If you see after knight c5, black really don't have any move. So a6 and b5 doesn't really work for black. So b5, he took hg and knight c5. After dc5, he simply took queen into d7. Now the point behind this opening is very clear. White gets a very strong diagonal, and now even his threatening bishop into c6 loses a piece, even queen into c6. So if you support with any piece, but still this piece is under attack, and he can capture with bishop into c6, and queen into e7 is also hanging. So black is in trouble in this position. Now he was forced to defend either this or leave that piece forever. I think pause this position for a while and see what black can play in this position. I hope you can see this move, rook f to c8. If you capture with bishop into c6, for example, you can simply play rook a7, attacking the queen, force it to move and leave this bishop on c6. So that won't be a good idea for white to give a strong bishop on g2 for a bad knight on c6. So here there is a very good move called rook into e6. See, in this previous position, after playing rook c8, now see all the black pieces, they are very bad. Every piece on the queen is simply defending, and they are all on the queen side, left the complete king alone. Even the only piece is this bishop on e7, likely to defend the black king. So here karpov sees this move and played rook into e6, a very good move. If you capture with f into e6, then if you capture with f into e6, for example, then bishop c6, rook a7, queen into e6, with a clear 2 pawns advantage, and all the black camp is very weak. Knight d5 square, bishop d5, this d6 pawn, everything, and these pieces are not well developed. So white will have a piece and 2 pawns for his exchange, which is more than enough, and the very bad king. So there is no way that he can capture f into e6. Instead he played rook a7. Now after rook a7, now white is forced to leave this rook on e6, which will be very bad for white. So he captured another good move, rook into g6, giving rook for 2 pawns. So after f into g6, queen e6 check, king g7, bishop c6, with the idea of gaining the piece again. So still white is having a bishop and two pawns for his exchange sacrifice. So here he played rook g8, controlling the open file, and c into b5. After c into b5, bishop f6 and knight e4, bishop d4. Now black is thinking that he is very better placed on bishop d4. So white took b into a6, q b6, supporting this and trying to pin this bishop on c6, and rook d1, rook into a6, queen into a6, simply taking this pawn and trying to activate his queen by playing queen e2 something, but he missed one more tactical move, and here black will face a lot of problem. Okay, pause this position for a while and try to see that move. Okay, see in this, so he played rook into d4. The reason why he took rook into d4 is simply the squares around the king, black squares around the king are pretty weak, and these squares can be controlled only by this bishop. So rook into d4, another exchange sacrifice. After rook into d4, queen f6 check, king g8, and I think you can play this forced continuation when your king is under attack like this. So king g8, queen g6, and king f8 is the only move. So for example, if you play rook g7, queen e8, king h7, knight f6, king h6, queen h5 is a checkmate. For example, if you play rook g7, queen e8, king h7, knight f6, king h6, and queen h5 is a checkmate. So there is no way he can defend with rook. So king f8 is the only move. Then queen e8, king g7, queen e5 check, king g6, knight f6 check, king e8, bishop e8 check, king f8, and queen into c5 check, queen d6 is the only move. For example, if you play rook d6, knight e4, pinning the rook, king into e8, knight d6 wins the rook. So for example, even if he plays a move like king e7 or king d7, king e7, he can simply grab this queen rook on a7. So queen d6, queen into a7, queen into f6, bishop h5, rook d2, b3 supporting this pawn, rook b2, king g2. Here Topalov feels that he can resign this position in view of that is open king and no winning structure, no winning pawns, nothing. Okay, this was a very good game played by Anatoly Karpov, and this is the best performance of Anatoly Karpov in linares tournament 1994, where he made more than 3000 rating performance. I hope you enjoy the game. See you in the next class. Bye.